Hello everybody, Barry here from Vail Skate Supply. Today we're going to learn how to wax a snowboard. Once you have your board safely mounted on your workbench, the first step is to take a gummy stone, a soft stone, and deburr your edges where you may have hit any rocks, nicked the edges, made a little roughness. Right here it looks like I may have hit something, possibly a rock or something. And your soft stone doesn't necessarily sharpen your edges, and it doesn't necessarily dull them either. It just takes the small burrs off. And the small burrs will hang up in the snow, cause an inconsistency, mess with you when you ride. So you don't really want those. Snow's been pretty good lately, so other than that one little spot, it really wasn't too bad. There's several different kinds of wax you can use for different temperatures. Here at Vail, the temperature changes a lot. I like to go with what we call a universal. Works well in all temperatures. Standard household iron is what I use. I like this one because it has an extremely long cord. It's a bonus. And an on switch. You don't want to get your iron too hot so it's making a bunch of smoke. I usually like to set it on the silk nylon setting. Seems to work well with this particular iron. Once you get it up into like for cottons, it's going to smoke. It's going to be too hot. Don't do that. Give your iron a few minutes to heat up. This one heats up pretty quick, so we're pretty much ready to go. Take a nice sized piece of wax, find a nice flat place on it. I'm going to actually bring it in a little closer for this. I like to make a little bead of wax down each edge of the board. And across the tip and tail. After I've done that, I make a little S. A snake design up and down the center of the board. Now we're getting a little bit of smoke here. That iron is a little hot. I'm going to turn it down just a hair. After I have a good amount of wax all over the base of the board, you then heat up the wax into the board. By doing this, the base of the board actually has pores like your skin. The heat causes those pores to expand and also the wax to melt. So the pores open up, the wax melts down into the base of the board. This is really good for the base of your board as far as longevity. It makes you go faster, and it just gives you a really good protection against the elements. Here at Vail we have a lot of catwalks, which are basically roads to get from one place to another. It's not so steep sometimes, and the last thing you want if you're a snowboarder is to be chasing skiers around and having to skate on those catwalks, take your foot out of your binding. Good wax will make it so you're actually faster than those boneheads. Makes for a good time. Always keep the iron moving while you're doing this. Just getting the board hot enough to melt the wax. You don't want to heat up any areas of the board where there may be inserts from your bindings. There's metal in there. So that metal, if it gets too hot, it will cause your P-Tex to blister. You don't want that to happen. That can cause costly full tune repairs. So I try to always keep the iron moving. I'm never on the same spot of the board for more than a few seconds. And I could like to go over each part of the board 2 or 3 times. Heating the wax up, heating the base up, letting it solidify, and then remelting it. This really lets the base soak in that wax. It really gives it a good protective coating, and it holds the wax longer. A lot of these shops, if people take their boards to them, they call it a hot wax, but they just run it across the belt, and it doesn't actually heat the base of your board up, and there's no way for that wax to actually work into the base of the board. It's really only good for a few runs. I do not recommend a belt wax. After letting your board cool down for, about 5 minutes, getting back to room temperature, the wax is all solidified. The next step is the scraping. It's nice to always have a sharp scraper, a nice plastic scraper. This is the most important part of your wax. You don't want to leave any of this excess wax on here. It'll freeze up and cause you to stick. So if your board sticks, you're not going to have a good time. So what you want to do is, I like to push the wax with the scraper at an angle like this. If you're scraping like this, it's pulling your wax out of your base. Pushing the wax into the base is what you want to accomplish, going long ways with the length of the board. Pretty much every snowboard has small dimples where the bindings go in. It kind of pulls the base up into it when you tighten the bindings down. So those are areas that you want to put a little extra attention on when scraping, because there will be a little excess wax buildup every time. Now that we've scraped it down, scraped all the excess wax down pretty good, our final step is the buff. I take a Brillo pad. This is actually made specifically for waxing, but it is very similar to your kitchen Brillo pad, which also works. And just give it a good buff. If you see any inconsistencies in the wax, just smooth it out. Smooth it out. Just like you're buffing out the wax in your car. You're buffing out the wax on your board. And this makes a big difference between just a wax and a scrape and a wax and a scrape and a buff. It's really that finishing touch that makes your board super smooth and super fast. There's nothing better than when there's a skier pushing down a catwalk and you just go flying by them, coasting. Makes all this work worth every second of it. Alright, looks like this baby's all ready to go. I'm going to throw my gear on, and I'll see you on the hill.